Right, in this video, I'm going to be going over whether cold outreach is a numbers game or not. And it's basically going to be a practical guide for choosing the right go to market motion for your team or your business. So, the executive summary of what I'm going to be going through is that I've seen it time and time again. Like cold outreach is always seen as a numbers game, even like in any type of business I've worked with. And it implies that the success is primarily comes from sending as many messages as possible. But in practice, in certain situations, cold outreach operates under two distinct models. So you've got one model which is less about volume, and this is from Jordan Crawford's idea of a permissionless value proposition. And this is a framework that he came up with that is very focused on like high insight, high personalization, and high relevancy. Um, but it's fairly low volume because it's designed for more like vertical SaaS where your target market is more limited. So you need to make the most of that target market. Um, so what a permissionless value proposition is it's basically a pain-based segment. So it's a list of people who you know for sure based on data have a certain type of pain, and it prioritizes depth, relevance, and high positive reply rates over complete scale where you're sending thousands of emails a day. And yeah, like I said, it was created by Jordan Crawford. So if you're interested in that stuff, you should check out his courses. They're really good. On the other hand, you have Offer-Arbitrage, which is basically high volume go to market. And this is less based on high insight and more based on like intent, offers, and high scalability. So this uses large intent based lists and offer first messaging. It prioritizes rapid testing and optimization and scale over per prospect depth. So you're A B testing like on bigger lists of like 500 people, angles, offers, rather than going into crazy depth like the permissions value proposition does. So, like for example, with permission value, with a PVP, um, an email might cost you $2 to send because you've done so much AI insight to try and pull together all these data sources into one message. Whereas with these ones, like it's going to be very cheap to send, and you're going to be sending a few thousand emails a day. And one of the main people in the GTM space who uses this method is Eric Nowakowski. So you should check out his YouTube channel as well. He's great. But cold outreach is a numbers game in markets where volume based testing is feasible and necessary. So if you've got a large target market, you've got a moderate account contract value, and then you've not really got any existential pain. So, like in these high volume markets, you're usually not solving pains that are going to like make or break their business. Whereas in this one, in the PvP framework, you actually usually are. And cold outreach is not a numbers game in markets where depth, precision, and insight matter more than scale. So you've got smaller TAM, much higher account contract value. So any opportunity is worth a lot of money to you, and a specific acute pain that can really hurt them if they don't solve it. So the outreach equation, at a basic level, any outbound motion can be approximated to how many meetings you're going to book is going to be based on how many contacts you've emailed, how good your deliverability is, so how many of them actually seen your email, how many of them have opened your email, how many have replied to your email, how many have replied positively in interest and actually being interested in what your messaging is, and then how many have actually showed up to the meeting. Um, Different GTM approaches adjust different parts of this equation. So, like the PVP framework, also known as like the Cannonball GTM, which is Jordan Crawford's newsletter. You should check that out. It's really good. But this basically keeps contacts relatively low just because your TAM is quite small. But it focuses on increasing reply rate and positive reply rate because it's so highly relevant and insight led. Whereas the Offer-Arbitrage is more high volume, increases the contacts, still with a defined ICP, and sometimes intent criteria like you might use data points like they follow certain pages on LinkedIn or they've just hired an SDR or whatever it is. But sometimes it's literally just the ICP defined. So heads heads of marketing at e-commerce companies, for example, and it optimizes reply rate and positive reply rate through structured testing of offers and messages. So because you've got so much volume, you can put 500 contacts into all these different angle test, offer test, size of messaging test. Like you can just run ridiculous amounts of tests and figure out what works, and then scale what works basically. But the key question is not whether outreach is purely a numbers game, but which combination of volume of depth is appropriate for the specific market and business model you're in. So I always try and go for quality and quantity, but sometimes if you want to get to the level that you're getting in these PVPs, it can be just too expensive to run at super scale where you're sending like 10,000 cold emails a day. So sometimes you have to like pick which one you're going to sacrifice. Are you going to sacrifice your positive reply rate, or are you going to sacrifice the volume? You kind of just have to pick. So if we go into a bit more depth on model one, which is the PVP, basically, the overview of this is it focuses on pain-based segmentation and deep, relevant insights. The goal is to send fewer but much more valuable messages, and each touch aims to demonstrate understanding and deliver value up front. So the assumption is it's high relevance plus strong insight, and this leads to significantly higher positive reply rates. So what actually is it? Like, how is it built? Um, it's an insight or a piece of information included directly in the outreach that does these four things. So it is based on real data that you found publicly. So these could be government records, job postings, tech stacks, public financials, social signals, and or shareable proprietary. So anonymized benchmarks, usage patterns, performance trends. It's also relevant to the product, so connected to a problem or outcome that the product addresses. So when I say product, I mean your product that you sell. Like it is connected to a problem or outcome that you can kind of solve in some kind of way, so that when you deliver this value, you can like in the future when that conversation has started, you can kind of pitch it into selling your actual product as well. And this is the core bit: is it's independently valuable. So the recipient benefits even if they never become a customer. Just by them reading that email, they should get some value from it. And if it's really good, they should be willing to pay to receive that email because that email actually generates them revenue in some kind of way. And the next thing is it's permissionless. So it's delivered without asking for any time. So you're not asking for meetings, or permission first. And the message leads with value, not with a meeting or request. So Jordan Crawford is always talking about like just giving someone that like joy moment where where you're working, you receive like 10 cold emails a day and they're all just pretty trash. And then finally something comes through where you're just like, wow, I have no idea how they've done this. And like this is actually so valuable. It's generated my business revenue. That's when you can sort of like build relationships quickly in a small town. At least that's the way I've understood it from what he said. So here's some examples and mechanics of when it works. So imagine like a pricing benchmark PVP. So your segment would be small service businesses in a particular geography. And then the data would be aggregated pricing from thousands of similar businesses around there. And the insight could be a recommended pricing band, balancing close rates and revenue. And the value the recipient gets is because they can adjust their pricing strategy immediately based on actual data and increase their conversion rate, which is pretty impressive. And then example B would be utilization opportunity PVP. So firms owning specific high value assets. These might be like cranes or stuff you rent out. And then the data be public records on upcoming projects and equipment inventory. And then the insight could be short term revenue opportunity for renting or utilizing idle assets. So they get huge value because they're going to get a concrete revenue opportunity that they might not have known about because they didn't have access to the data. So the mechanics of the PVP model is deliberately a narrow TAM because everyone in your TAM has to have this pain. It's like a pain qualified segment. So it's probably only going to be a few thousand accounts, if that. And it's basically selected on pain intensity and fit, not just like a broad ICP. The segment level data analysis, so you combine 2 to 3 data sources for segment relevant insights. So rather than just like taking one insight, like they've hired a new SDR, you can combine like all these different data sources to create. So when you bring them together, it creates real value. Obviously, that's quite complicated and it's quite hard to achieve, but when you do, it's very powerful. You'll expect much higher reply rates, so like positive reply rates of 15 to 30%. And yeah, the emphasis is all on quality. So you're going to get less opportunities, but much higher quality ones. And that's why it's so important that your contract value is much higher if you're using the PVP. And this is situations where it's well suited. So TAM's relatively small, product is vertical SaaS or niche SaaS or niche SaaS. That's really important. Or like a really specialized product or service. The pain is acute or existential, so it really hurts their revenue, compliance, supply chain. Like it could really hurt them if they don't solve it. And the account value is moderate to high, so like 20K to 100K a year. And then there are usable data sources for meaningful PVPs. Like that's probably the hardest part, is finding the data that you're going to combine together to create value. But usually there is something if you look deep enough. So model two is the high volume GTM. Um, Basically, the overview of this is it starts from large intent informed contact lists. So like you want to be having contact lists of at least 100K, because by the time you like actually verify the emails, you're going to bring it down to about 50 to 60K. And you use offer first messaging rather than like heavy insight building. So you're not doing crazy personalization. You're usually just seeing what offers and angles work and what pain points resonate with the audience the most. You're going to run tons of different experiments across offer and message frameworks and across different segments within that ICP. And you can identify winning combinations via response data and scale them. I wouldn't just do response data. Like it'd be amazing if you could connect to your CRM and see which ones are actually generating revenue, because reply rate isn't always the best indicator. Revenue is. So that is definitely something to do, and just track which ones are generating the most and then scale them. But this is where outreach performs more like a numbers game. It's still data driven and you're still testing in a structured way, but it is definitely more of a numbers game. You can do intent based lists. So you can do like company posts, competitors post, competitors followers on LinkedIn. You can look at their technology stacks. You can look at hiring signals. And you can use these to segment lists and run different tests. So you can see, if I'm reaching out to people who are hiring new SDRs, is that performing better than people who have no intent signal? And you can run that test. But that's why you need 40 to 60,000 usable contacts, because you're going to be running so many little tests to find what works. So this is how the offers testing infrastructure and fit offer first messaging, like how this all works together. So it's built around a clear, low friction offers, so not complex insights. So basically, what the company does and for who, with any social proof you've got, the specific play or tactic that's worked for similar customers, a free or low risk value component. So you could do like some free work for them, a workshop, lead magnets, a free campaign, and then simple next steps that reduce perceived risk. So like basically reducing the risk of the offer, or just sending them over like a Loom video, or yeah, free consultation, just reducing the friction in any kind of way. And the testing matrix you could use, you could do like 5 to 7 different offers, 3 to 5 different message frameworks, and then you could have like 15 to 20 total offer message combinations. And then each combination you'd put in like 500 to 1,000 contacts, which is why you need such a big list. And then you wouldn't be tracking open rate. I shouldn't have put that in there, but you'd be tracking reply rate, positive reply rate, meetings booked, and then ideally connecting to your CRM and tracking revenue generated. And the thresholds you're looking for is usually like, if your reply rate is below 1%, then probably discontinue that. It's either deliverability is tanked or no one cares. 2 to 3%, Positive reply rate, definitely viable, could scale. And then 4% positive reply rate. That's a strong campaign that you definitely want to scale. So it's almost like Facebook ads creative testing. Like you run small little tests, make sure that they spend a certain amount of budget, and in this case, the budget is how many emails they send, and then you just see what works from the data and you scale that. So infrastructure requirements, you're going to need a lot of sending domains that are all going to have to be set up the correct way with SPF, DKIM, DMARC, all warmed up for 2 weeks at least. You're going to be needing a sending platform so that you can actually send high volume and land in the inbox. And then you're going to need to keep your data very clean. So you need email verification, bounce minimization, AI assisted relevance, filtering. Need to do all of that. And then situations where the high volume model is well suited is basically really large TAMs, so above 40,000. Product is horizontal SaaS or just like a more broad service. Pain is real, but not typically existential. So it could be something people would like to have, but they don't like desperately need it. Account contract value is low, but mid range. So it could be like 3K to 30K a year. And business values speed of learning and iteration. So I've actually been working with a lot of like fairly early stage SaaS at the moment. And one of the biggest benefits they find from this method is just literally testing the message market fit at speed. Um, so definitely one of the benefits of doing this. So here's them kind of like compared. And in Jordan Crawford's recent blog post, he was describing how the PvP is more like painting the Mona Lisa, whereas the high volume method is more like printing the Mona Lisa. So here's like a comparison of both of them. So what's the core lever? This is going to be depth and insight per prospect, whereas this is more volume and offer testing. Contract value, um, contact volume is going to be low to moderate in this one, high tens of thousands. Data usage, going to need super deep insights, whereas here less so. Message design is going to be insight led and really segment specific, whereas this is more like offer led, framework based. Reply rate is going to be way higher on this one than this one. TAM is going to be smaller on this one, much bigger here. Account value is going to be a lot higher here, a lot lower there. And operational demands is going to be a lot more analytical research here, whereas here it's going to be all about your deliverability mainly. So here's kind of some examples and how I would decide in each situation. So if you were a vertical SaaS selling to narrow industry with high deal sizes, that would mean you probably have a small target market, got a high account value, you're solving a critical pain, and you've got high PVB capability. So the recommended approach would obviously be the PVP, build 1 to 3 PVP per key segment and focus on high quality conversations, not volume. In this situation, if you're horizontal SaaS, improving a common workflow across many industries, then you've got a large TAM, you've got a mid-sized account value, you've got significant but non-critical pain, and then you've got moderate to low PVP capability. So this one you'd go for high volume, build intent-based list, test multiple offers, messages, and optimize for scalability with your campaigns. And then this one, you got a category specific tooling with sizable but not massive market. This would be a medium TAM, a medium to high account value, significant pain, and then there's some PVP capability. So this would be a more awkward situation. And this one you'd use PVP for top tier or strategic accounts, so like the top 10%. But then you just use the structured like volume based messaging for the rest of your TAM. So to summarize, is cold outreach a numbers game? So when it does behave like a numbers game is when the addressable market is large enough to support extensive testing. The product and account contract value is required. Like you need lots of different contracts to get a significant pipeline volume. So it's a lower contract value, and the offer message fit is not obvious. So you have to experiment. And there's a strong operational capacity for list building, delivery, and measurement. Like it takes a lot of time to do this and like manage that system. Whereas when it behaves less like a numbers game and more like insight delivery and relationship building is when the target market is smaller and more constrained. Buyers face specific high impact problems, and the deals are large enough, but fewer, to make better conversations like a more strategic tactic. And then unique insights can be reliably generated from publicly available data. So, to recap the key points and emphasize, the outreach equation shows where numbers actually matter. So, there's two viable models, the PVP or high volume, and then you basically choose the model based on your target market size, your account contract value, pain intensity, and data available publicly to create PVPs. So cold outreach can function as a numbers game or as an insight game, depending on the context. But the main task is to align the outreach model with the underlying market and business economics that you're dealing with. So if you'd like us to discuss on a call what would be the best model for you, you can book a call with the link below. We work with B2B companies to help them grow their pipeline. But other than that, subscribe to the channel, check out the other videos, and I'll see you in the next one.